Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and my good friend Jex Russell is joining me once again for the Kansas Deep Dive. The Deep Dive series is, man, we're getting there. We're getting to the close of all the Kansas studio albums. Um, we're up to 1995. Let It Be Your Guide, the Kansas Album Review, is my Kansas book that talks about each of the albums, start to finish, all the way through. And Jex was kind enough to sit in on some of those panels, including the album that we're going to talk about today. A really, really overlooked album, came out in 1995, Freaks of Nature. This was as a new Kansas fan circa 92, this was the first new Kansas studio album I was waiting for, and I was not disappointed. And this was an album that Jex was not at all familiar with. And I said, would you want to listen to this album and answer some questions on it? He was game. And I think he came away, he was surprised with Power. If you saw that episode, this is a surprise of a different sort. Jex, what were your thoughts overall after you completed listening to Freaks of Nature?
Well, initially, when you presented it to me, I just remember thinking, I've never even heard of this. The title, the cover, because Power, while I had never heard it before, I had seen it. I had seen that
Yeah.
cover out in the wild. I was familiar with the look. This one, never even seen it, never heard of it. So I was going in completely blind. And listening to it, I was like, okay, it's different because we're in the 90s now. So obviously Kansas is keeping up with the times, but it still sounds like Kansas. You listen to it, you're like, okay, I'm hearing the familiarity. So they're not like going a whole other direction. They're not changing their sound and trying to keep up with the times, but they're keeping up with the times, but they're not changing completely yet. It was interesting.
Yeah, 9 years. I mean, so that right there, that's a great summary. That's the difference between having that major label distribution. This was Kansas' first studio album. It's on a small label out of Georgia called Intersound, which also put out the Live at the Whiskey album in '92, and it just didn't have the distribution. I had to special order it. I don't know how even I knew it was coming out. Pre-internet, I look back and I wonder, how did I even know some of these things were coming out? I must have really been on it. I don't know. But
Magazine.
it's a different album for a lot of reasons. Most notably, it's a different lineup. So you've got Steve Walsh on vocals still, Richard Williams on guitar, Billy Hart on drums, Billy Greer on bass. You've also got keyboard player Greg Robert, who's new to the band. But the biggest change that happened was it's an addition to the band, but it's also a reintroduction to the band of a sound, and that is David Ragsdale coming in on guitar, but most notably on violin. So now you've got that classic Kansas sound back that hadn't been on a Kansas album at this point since Vinyl Confessions in '82, which was the last one that Robbie Steinhardt was on before he left for the first time. So that's probably the biggest difference. But also, this album, like I said, was their first for an independent label. They really didn't have there were no commercial considerations. So I think this is Kansas in a very pure form, writing and playing the music that they want to play. And it seems like the mandate, or just the collective thought they all had in their head, was let's rock. Because this album has some moments that are among the heaviest moments on any Kansas album. Let's start with the opener, I Can Fly. This one kind of comes out of nowhere. It's got like a sound collage coming at you before the actual song starts. Jax, what were your thoughts when you heard this and when you heard it kick in?
Well, I think we talked about it too. Like the drums, like Phil Ehart on drums. I'm like, wow, like they're really like the production on it, like they're so clear, they're so crisp. It's like it just grabs you right out of the gate with this one song, I Can Fly. And I was like, I'm listening, you know. You have my attention.
Yeah.
Let's see
Yeah,
where else it goes.
it's unassuming. You've got this chug and the violin creates a nice contrast. So that happens. Steve Walsh comes in, he's singing like at the highest part of his register.
Yeah.
But there's like and then like it just starts hammering at you, and we're off to the races, man. Like it's just crazy. Um, really fast, and it just won't let up. And yeah, Phil Ehart, I mean, man, that guy never gets the credit for being such a great drummer. He's
No.
just hammering his way through this album. I mean, this does not sound like a band that had been around for over 20 years at this point. This sounds like a young, hungry, upstart prog band that said, "Hey, let's get into this," you know? And then it breaks into that middle section and it's heavy again. It's got that dun 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 dun, dun like, but it's got all the Kansas trademarks you'd want. It's got the violin, it's got the complex arrangements. Um, I really like the lyrics to this one. Like by this point, hang on a second. The dog wants in, I think. But by this point, Steve Walsh, as a lot of vocalists do, they get up there in age, and the voice starts to change a little bit. I think he sounds pretty good on this album. And as a vocal performance, I'd seen them live the year before that, but I really like the lyrics in this song, particularly the line, "They said I was good. I thought they said great." I really like that. That's a little bit of self-depreciating there. A great start to the album, and I remember getting this home and putting it on, and I was just I hadn't heard anything off it. You're not going to hear anything off this.
No.
But I listen to this all the time, and I still put it on fairly regularly. I've never ranked the Kansas albums, Jex, but this could be in my top 5. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic for for a latter day album. It is so strong. Yeah, and it came and went, and it's such a shame. Although it has been reissued, it's available on vinyl, which it never was before. So I think you can still get it. Next up, we have Desperate Times. How about this one?
Again, another fantastic song, and it's so evident here, the musicianship. The musicianship is just through the roof. Like everyone is just shining and just kind of bouncing back and forth off of one another. And again, I know I say the word a lot, but it surprised me because I was surprised with Power, like I said, because I wasn't expecting it. And then with this one, it was surprise all over again because it doesn't necessarily sound like Power, but it's still Kansas. And the addition of the violin, like you said, with David Ragsdale on violin, it brings back that familiarity of Kansas of old. And yeah, it just surprised me.
One of the things that helps with the familiarity is that they've got their producer Jeff Glicksman back, and he was like, Jeff Glicksman was to Kansas like what Bob Ezrin was to Alice Cooper, or he was their guy, and he understands this band. But it is a modern production. I mean, chances are it was the album itself was recorded. I want to get this right. It was recorded in a kind of a unique place. Of course, it's not in front of me here. This was recorded in Trinidad.
Wow.
Apparently, somebody knew somebody that and they were able to get the studio at a kind of a good rate. It's a fantastic sounding album, and the fact that they've got Glicksman, but it's this new lineup. So yes, there are hints of 70s Kansas here, but the production is right up to date.
Yeah.
It's not dated at all. The drums sound fantastic. The guitars are nice and loud. Everything's mixed really well. Except for one part in I Can Fly where it sounds like the vocals are too far back in the mix. That's a minor thing. Desperate Times is another heavy one, and it kind of sounds like its title, like there's a franticness to it, but it's compelling, and the chorus is just so memorable with ride ride rocket ride, and it's like the double time on the drums, but you've got the violin and like it's an odd time signature, and it's so good. So right away you got bam bam, tracks 1 and 2 just hit you over the head, and they hit you over the head so hard that I think the boys thought, let's bring it down a little bit. So we get I think one of only 2 respites on this album, slower songs, Hope Once Again. What did you think of this one?
Um, so I'm gonna be kind of repeating myself from what I said with Power, but again, only hearing it a couple of times. There's some songs like the title, I can't remember what the song sounds like, but again, same as Power, not a dud on here. And I feel like the same as Power, the sequencing. I feel like
Mhm.
a broken record. I'm repeating myself. I know it, but it's true. I feel like, okay, let's
I've
start
been, I've been, I've been repeated myself on this channel for 10 years. Don't worry about it.
Okay, good. No, I'm serious though. Like, you start out really strong with I Can Fly with the drums, and then same with Desperate Times, and then slow one before they pick up again. And I dig that because not all albums do this. Sometimes like you get a really heavy song and then a ballad, okay, and then another ballad, and another. This is perfect.
Hope once again is a nice little ballad, beautiful violin melody. There's a counterpoint vocal from there's a girl's voice in there. I think her name is Renee Castle. I think that's the name. Never heard of her before or since, but it's a good contrast to Steve's vocal. One of the things I like about this song, because it's really heavy on the violin, but when in the middle section comes, it's kind of a stripped down song, and you can really hear just how good Phil Ehart's drums are recorded, and it makes me wish I still had a drum kit because the snare drum is just so crisp and perfect. But then, without warning, if someone were to ask me, Tim, what's the single heaviest Kansas song? I would say Black Fathom 4. This is the closest I think that Kansas came to all out metal, or at least prog metal. You must have heard this and gone, whoa, because this one just comes in and it takes no prisoners.
Well, yeah, and I need to hear Black Fathom 1 through 3 now because Black Fathom
I
4
know, right?
just
What's up with 4?
well, and they sing it in the chorus too. Like usually, if you see a number at the end of a title, you don't expect them to sing it out loud, but they say Black Fathom 4,
Yeah.
and you are not kidding. It is the closest Kansas has come to metal. It definitely got my attention. I was like, wow. Again, unexpected is the theme. That's the theme with these albums that I've reviewed. It's just so unexpected. You don't know where they're going next. And I love that. I love that. You never know what to expect.
Midsection to this song, I mean, it stops up and then all of a sudden it gets fast. And there's some crazy, cool, like really good guitar lines on here, back and forth. Richard Williams sparring with Dave Ragsdale, who's a good guitar player in his own right, but the guitar and the violin going back and forth. And again, Phil Ehart on the drums, right before that last chorus, like, like just these really, and then Steve Walsh blowing his voice out, like, oh. It's exciting. It pumps you up, and it's like you're not expecting that from. There's nothing polite about this. There's a just a determination to say we can do this any bit as well as younger bands. We're not intimidated by you. This is them. It's a statement. The next song, Under the Knife, starts out. You think that it's going to be a little bit of a slower song, but the chorus kicks in a very cool way. Again, I really like the lyrics on this one. Did you have any real thoughts about this song?
No, not particularly.
He's
Again,
like, no, I hated it. It was bad. No, no thoughts.
oh,
No,
absolutely not. No, there's no. I will say there's no song I hated or that I was like, I could do without this one. There are songs that I like more than others for sure, but there's no song that was like, no, pass. Again, consistency here is great, and I enjoyed this one. I don't know if because there's 9 tracks, so I don't know if this ended side one or started side two as far
I
as the
think it
length
did. I
goes.
think this was. I think this started side two.
Okay, yeah,
I don't
and
have the record right in front of me, but I think it did. And
yeah,
it was issued on cassette too. So yeah, there is a
okay,
split in the songs.
yeah, no, because I was gonna say I feel like it would be a good side opener, so that would make
Sneaks up
sense.
on you.
Yeah,
It sneaks
yeah,
up on you. Um, the lyrics are really cool. I think that it's a relationship metaphor, or it's something is there that is basically saying, um, they'll cut you out of me. It's just an interesting take on an old theme. Next up is it is a slower song, but it's not a ballad. It's very moody. It's called Need. This one's got a lot of cool percussion in it.
yeah, and not to give too many spoilers away, but you had mentioned the Peter Gabriel saying
That's the
like,
vibe I got from this.
yeah, and once you said it, I was like, oh, it's so true. Like I couldn't unhear it now. Like I could picture it being on the So album.
Yeah.
You know, it's yeah, it's got that feel. It's different.
Next up is the title song "Freaks of Nature," and to me, this could be like a classic Deep Purple song. Like it's got that like Black Knight or Strange Kind of Woman, or but really heavy.
Yeah, I thought I remember thinking Boston kind of too,
That too, that too.
uh,
Yeah,
later Boston, like Walk On, you know?
like Walk On, but even something like I love it when song titles leave my brain. Smoking.
Oh,
That's what
yeah.
I mean. Yeah, because it's a shuffle. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, great song, great title track. Killer song.
I like the lyric, every freak in nature should know how to run the whole freaking show. And that might sound cheesy, but Steve Walsh sells it. You're like, yeah, that's right. That's right. And as we roll along here, this was a cool thing to read in the credits. Cold Gray Morning. This is a song written by Kerry Livgren, their founder, the wrote so many of those early songs, and they're sort of like spiritual guide, I guess. He hadn't been in the band for years at this point. This is just a song he gave them to record, and man, oh man, it's good. And it's heavy too when it kicks into that chorus. It's such a long time, like dun 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 dun. Like again, they're just slamming you with this album.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like that one just sounds like Kansas of old to me, you know.
Mhm.
It's got that familiar feel. And
And best of all, and what I love about the current lineup is they can take anything from any phase of Kansas' career and play it. Because a lot of bands that have been around for a long time, there are just, and I don't need to name names, but you all know what I'm talking about. There are certain segments to their career that just you never hear from again. It's like it never happened.
yeah.
But this band, they're not afraid of anything in their catalog. And on the newest live album they put out, which is Point of No Return Live and Beyond, the first song on the album is Cold Gray Morning. I was so glad that they brought that back. I'm like, man, I hope this gets people checking out the Freaks of Nature album, because it's so good and they played it so well. It was awesome. It was a nice surprise. Um, and then we end off with I think a really good closer, Peaceful and Warm. And this is a primarily acoustic song Steve Walsh wrote. Great vocals, and again, very evocative. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Taking in the View uh, from the Power album, but this one is up to date. It's him driving through his old hometown and basically describing what he sees. Um, and there's not a lot to it musically. It's just a really nice way to wind the album down. By this time, you're kind of ready for that because they've been hitting you over the head a lot. Maybe stop for a bit, just a bit. Did you have any thoughts on this one, Jax?
I thought it was a really nice way to close the album. It's a beautiful slow song. Like we mentioned before, how I prefer the heavier side of things, but every now and then I like it when bands slow down. And yeah, it's David Ragsdale on violin too. Just kind of steals the show. I think
Yeah.
I really like his violin playing. So yeah, I liked it.
And then, as a bonus, if you keep this is the age of the hidden tracks on
Oh,
CDs, right? You keep it playing, they do this magnificent classic Kansas sounding coda. Like it sounds like it could have come off a Leftoverture. It's awesome. My only complaint was I think it's good enough. They should have made it track 10 and gave it a title.
yeah.
It's a really nice way to close the album. Peaceful and Warm is nice. It fades out completely. But if you look at the CD, you're like, wait a second, this says it's however long, and there's like a minute and a half, like or whatever left. And you're like, what? Something's gonna come at and man, what a cool little piece of music. And I just kind of wish they'd have given it a title because I think it's worthy of it. But yeah, what a great way to what a great finish. And I remember, sadly, there wouldn't be a lot more new Kansas music to come. There'd only be 3 more studio albums since then. This is 1995, but again, this is an example of why I wanted to give each of the albums their due in the book, because this didn't have a major label push behind it, but it's every bit as good and it's so worth checking out. So, folks, Freaks of Nature, however you need to get it. I should also mention the packaging is really cool. The logo has like little creatures inside each of the letters.
I hadn't even noticed that.
Yeah, that's the beauty about, you know, their album art. Here's the band on the back, and there's all sorts of, they're surrounded by, you know, all kinds of creatures too. And then that continues throughout the album. I mean, so Steve Walsh is holding this giant skull of something or other, and something I didn't notice at first, this picture of Phil Lehart, there's a snake coiled around his drumstick.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. Check it out. And please, if you are a Kansas fan, based on the great input from Jex and all of the contributors, please check out Let It Be Your Guide to Kansas Album Review. Available on Amazon, wherever your home country is, UK, Australia, Canada. Please check it out. Thanks for all the support. Jex, thanks for doing this with me. I've really enjoyed having you. It's always a pleasure having Jex on, and thanks for helping me with this deep dive. And thanks for giving the band a chance in stepping up with the book with a really like a fresh perspective. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for encouraging me and telling me to give it a chance, because otherwise I may not have, you know, like
sometimes you just need somebody to point in a certain direction with a band, because you can't listen to everything. There's not enough time, you know. So, but yeah. All right, folks, there you go. Link to the book below. You can support the channel by purchasing books or TBC merchandise at tpublic.com, such as this shirt, which has the album art on it. Tim Derling, Jex Russell, Tim's Vinyl Confessions. We'll see y'all later.